Do you spank your kids? How do you make time for sex with your spouse? How do I handle terrible twos? Hi friends, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Linnell. If you're not new, thank you so much for joining me again. Today we are wrapping my daughter's gifts for her 4th birthday, and I thought that while I do that, I would answer some questions. So let's jump right in. All right, so we're starting off strong, and the first question is, do you spank your kids? Every time I hear the word spank, I always remember Trevor Noah.
And I blame Oprah. She interviewed them and she said to them, she said, "You guys aren't going to spank them, are you?" And they were like, no, never, Oprah, never. No, we will not spank them. She left and they were like, yes, we don't spank. Here we beat. We beat. You don't spank a child, you spank a monkey. Here we beat. Cynthia, were you talking at the back? No, miss, you were talking. That means you are going to get a beating. But because it's Oprah's school, everybody is getting one. You're getting a beating. You're getting a beating. You're getting a beating. Everybody's getting a beating.
In the Caribbean and in Africa, we don't use the term spank, okay? We use the term beat. So the real question is, do I beat my children? And here's the thing. I think that as a Christian parent, because this is my frame of reference, I am a Christian parent, and so that is what I know and that is what I try to live by. I think that as a Christian parent, one of the things that you have to avoid doing is doing something and living in a way just because that's how it's done or that's how you grew up. I think that you have to really be able to filter your thoughts, your actions through the Word of God and through the Holy Spirit leading. There's quite a bit of debate in the Christian community as to whether spanking your kids is a good thing or not. Some people quote a lot of scripture in Proverbs about, excuse me, I think I'm coming down with the flu, so I might be a little sniffy. I hope that doesn't bother you guys too much. But like I was saying, there are actually a lot of debate about the topic about whether it's good or not to spank your kids. There are some people that believe it is a biblical mandate and that we have to spank our kids as children in order to discipline them correctly. And then there are others who believe that spanking is not good and that there is research that has shown that children that have been spanked do not do well, and so they don't believe in spanking. Now, here in the Caribbean and in Africa, it's very common, and I was saying that I feel like we need to be able to filter the things that we do, not just because it's done, but because we have really sought the Lord in that. And that is currently where I am at. I'm reading this book currently. It's called Heartfelt Discipline. I have been reading this book for months. I started it, I got like 3/4 way, then I got distracted by another book, but now I'm trying to complete it. And he brought up an interesting viewpoint. The writer is Clay Clarkson, and I really love their family. I love Sally Clarkson. I have a goal to read all of her books. They're just so good in terms of discipline and family discipleship. And so that book on discipline, he actually goes into a little bit of the verse, and he was saying that from his research, the spanking the child with the rod actually does not refer to a young child. It's actually talking about an adult, like 20-21 years of age. And he strongly believes that we misquote scripture when we spank our kids. As to where I fall on the matter, I think it's a freedom issue. Honestly, I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's wrong to use physical discipline with your kids, but I think it's definitely something that you have to be very, very careful with. And the reason why I say that is because I think that when we're parents, we have a lot of authority over our children, meaning that we provide for them, we take care of them, and there's nothing that they can do about it for a very long time. Now, when somebody is in such a position of power and authority, it's very, very easy to manipulate and take advantage of that power and authority. And we see it happening all the time, all over the world, with political leaders and church leaders and, you know, all of the drama. And so I think that as a parent, we have to be very careful to not yield our power over our children in a negative way. And I think that physical discipline can be done well, and I think that it also can not be done well. It can be done horribly. In fact, we know people who have been abused by their parents in that way. Another thing that I think is very important is that we have to remember where we are coming from. So one of the things that I find that we do a lot is that we do pendulum swings. And so you find that people who grew up in a household where they were maybe not necessarily abused, but they had, physical punishment and they did not like it, they tend to swing to the other side where they don't want to discipline their children at all. And then you have the other side of it where you have authoritative parents who overcorrect and over discipline in a way that is not edifying to the child. And so you have to be aware of where you fall, like where you stand and what is your predisposition. And I think it's something that you really have to pray about and ring to the Lord and ask for guidance and direction. I think it will be different for every family. But to answer the question, do I spank my kids? It's not illegal here in St. Lucia. I do, but it is not common. It's not something that I do very often. I try to reserve it for very specific things, and one of them is safety issues. So for example, if you drop my hand and run in the middle of the road, or we're out in public and you do something that endangers yourself, I tend to do physical discipline for that, because I want you to understand that your safety is at a risk, and I need you to understand that. I also use it for outright defiance. Like if I ask you to do something and you scream at me no, then I may use physical discipline for that. What I have noticed though is that I have a tendency to do it when I'm angry, and I don't think anybody should hit their children when they're angry or when they're frustrated. And so because I have noticed that tendency in me, I avoid it. I prefer not to hit them. So it's not something that I do very often, to be quite frank. I don't like it. I don't like how I feel when I hit my kids, even when I do it in a controlled manner, in a controlled setting. I don't like how I feel when I do it. So it's not my go-to punishment at all. All right, so moving on. What's the next question? So question number 2 is another spicy one. It says, how do you make time for sex with your spouse? And I definitely understand the question. If you knew, I am a doctor. I work full-time. My husband also works full-time. We homeschool the girls, so they're always with us. We're not only husband and wife and mom and dad, but we're also sister and granddaughter, grandson, and all of the things. And we're also getting into like our own entrepreneurial activities, and so it's a lot. And what I have found is that you just have to make your relationship with your spouse a priority. You have to be intentional about it. You really do have to think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, because if you don't, the time just passes by, and before you know it, a week has passed by, a month has passed by, and you guys have not had any intimate time together. So some of the things that I do practically, one of the first things I should mention is that I think that we as moms need to reframe our mindset, quite honestly. And the reason why I say that is because I find that a lot of us tend to not want to be intimate with our spouses if we don't feel like. And if you guys are anything like me, well, first of all, there are issues. You're sick, you're generally tired, or sometimes there are even hormonal issues or medical issues that that needs to be looked into and investigated. But sometimes I think a lot of it just has to do with the emotional toll of being a mom and working full-time. It's a lot to manage, and I feel like the time where most people have to be intimate is at night, and at that time most persons are just tired and they want to go to bed, and it's just easy to say no. It's definitely something that I wish I had realized a little bit earlier on in my marriage, that I don't have to be in the mood all the time to make things happen. Sometimes it can start off that I'm not in the mood, but quite often allowing it to happen means that I enjoy it too. The other thing that really helped me, again, was a mind shift change, was recognizing that intimacy with my husband was not just an obligation, but it's something that was good for me. Like, I enjoyed it. The intimacy that it brought between the two of us benefited our relationship, and therefore I benefited from that. So when I saw it as something that's beneficial to our marriage, it was a lot easier to make it a priority. And so those are the first two things that I would recommend. One, just remember that you're gonna enjoy it just as much as he does, and if you're not enjoying it, you need to speak up. Okay, if things are happening that you don't enjoy, or if it's not comfortable, I think that you need to communicate. We always talk about communication. Communication is so important, and you guys should be having regular communication about what's working and what's not working, and what's good and what's not good, and so that it can improve. And then as it improves, you find that, you know, it's easier for you to say yes. So there's that, recognizing that you enjoy it too. It should be enjoyable for you as well. And if it's not, trying to fix it, investing into, you know, that aspect of your life. So if it's not working for you, like what is it that you can do to improve it, whether that is looking into any hormonal issues or physical issues as well with the actual body, whether it is that you're under an enormous amount of stress or whatever the case is. But we do need to look into that area of our lives because it's very important. And the thing about being a mom is that the stability of the home is very important, and so our marriage should come first. And that is, again, a bit controversial for some people, but I truly do think that the marriage relationship comes above the children relationship. And again, I make the caveat that I'm speaking about normal relationships. I'm not talking about abusive ones where there is emotional, physical, mental abuse going on. I'm talking about a regular marriage. I think that the relationship between mother and father should be a priority, and I think that when the relationship between mom and dad is healthy, it is a stable environment for the kids, and we all know that stability is a huge factor for kids and how well they grow up. So my gosh, I feel like I said so many things, I'm lost. So reframe your mindset. Remember that it is good for you, that it's enjoyable for you, that you can start off even if you're not in the mood and can enjoy it, and do it anyways. And then the other thing I would also say, I don't know about other people, but for me, I really struggled with being intimate at hours of the day that was not nighttime. I don't know why, but it was very hard for me. And when you have young kids, I work a lot at night. Nighttime is not always possible, and so I had to learn to be able to do it at various times in the day. So I don't know if that's something one of you may have to overcome, but that's definitely something that helped me quite a bit. Now, I think that's enough sex talk for the day. Let's move on to the other question. So the other question is, how do I handle terrible twos? And you guys are probably going to get sick of hearing this phrase, but the first thing would be to reframe your mindset. So we are currently in the thick of it. We have a 4-year-old. Well, she's going to be 4 in pretty soon. So I feel like we're out of that phase. I feel like we don't have to deal with the things that we had to deal with when she was 2 and just about 3 years old. But currently our youngest is about 2.5, and she's very much in the thick of terrible twos. But here is one of the things that I learned, and this helps considerably, and it is that there is no such thing as terrible twos. Okay, you need to reframe your mindset. So like, if you go into terrible twos thinking that, oh, my child is terrible and it's just going to be miserable, then it is going to be miserable. I fully advocate that, you know, your mind frame really determines how you see things, and how you see things really determine how they influence you. And if you go into it thinking that, oh my gosh, terrible twos, tantrums and all of that, then it's gonna be terrible. So I would reframe it as terrific twos. And this is not toxic positivity where you just say, you know, terrific twos and you just ignore all of the crazy things that they do. I don't think so. But you cannot go around thinking that your child is in this terrible stage and oh my gosh, woe me. No, I think that you definitely need to reframe and say to yourself, this is terrific twos, and it is a perfect opportunity to love my child, to train my child, and to discipline my child. Yes, there will be points that are very difficult, but at the end of the day, kids are a blessing, and every stage comes with its own challenges. And the same thing for kids 2 and 3 years old. They are challenging. They're becoming their own person. They're learning the ropes. They're learning how to stand up for themselves, even to their parents. And so it can be very challenging, but at the same time, they're also so incredibly curious, and they're fun-loving, and they're funny, and they're learning to speak, and they say the darnest of things. So yes, all that to say, terrific twos is challenging, but it also has so much beauty in it. And I think that the moment you are able to recognize it at that, it changes everything. So that's the number one thing that helped me in handling my toddlers. Just reframing how I see them, not seeing them as a burden, not seeing them as horrible people that mess up my life. That was the first thing. But there's also some practical thing that I found help, and the number one thing is consistency. Like, I cannot stress enough how being consistent has made the biggest impact in our parenting, in our short parenting career. But that is one of the things that I have seen makes the biggest impact, and it's by far being consistent. And consistency is hard. Consistency is hard. It sounds easy, but it's hard. Just like, you know, you have that desire to work out, and you're like, this year is my year, and I'm going to the gym every day, and I'm going to eat salads or whatever the case is, and you make your New Year's resolution, and then by this time of year, but by this time of year, February, March, like, you're not consistent anymore. And it's the same thing with parenting. It's very, very, very hard to be consistent, because when you're tired from work, or you're lying down watching your favorite show and they're squibbling, like, it's very hard to get up from the couch and go discipline them or teach them or whatever the case is. And so it's very easy to be inconsistent, and inconsistency, in my humble opinion, is what breeds a lot of misbehavior in the kids. So what does that mean, like, practically? So when I talk about being consistent, I mean, if you say to your child that playing with the electrical outlets are not allowed, it means that every single time you see your child playing with an electrical outlet, they need to get a consequence. Whatever that consequence is, whether it's a timeout, whether it's a tap, whether it is that a toy gets taken away, you choose, but let it be appropriate for the action, you know? You don't give your child 10 taps and send them to timeout because they did something, you know, inconsequential. But you give them a consequence, and every single time they do the action that you've asked them not to do, first they need to know that they're not supposed to do it. You know, you can't discipline children for childish things. I remember talking about that one time in another video, that you can't discipline children for doing childish things. Like, you need to teach them as well, you know? So you need to teach them what is accepted and what is not accepted. And then you also want to make sure that you don't have, like, every single thing that they do, it's a problem. You know, like, if they do this, it's a problem. If they do that, it's a problem. Like, you know, like, nobody likes that, and I'm sure the kids don't like that either. So you have to make sure that you're not making every single thing a problem, that, you know, you have, like, your baseline. Like, what is it that's important to you as a family? Is it important to you that the kids do not tell lies? Is it important to you that the relationship between siblings is very important, and you don't want them bickering and fighting all the time? Is it that respecting authority is very important to you, and you do not tolerate back talking to your parents or to the grandparents? Like, as a family, what is your priority? And when you have determined what your priority is, Then you determine what the consequences are. And yes, I'm still talking about a 2-year-old. In fact, my husband and I, we started disciplining our kids from 6 months. So as soon as they, and please don't imagine that we're spanking kids at 6 months old, but as soon as they were able to move around and crawl, and they started touching things that they were not supposed to touch, we consistently said no. I mean, we didn't even do anything, like no. Every time they went to an electrical outlet, or anytime they went to like the TV stand and pulled something down, they got no, and then they were redirected to something that they could play with. And we noticed that in no time, you know, after doing it repeatedly, she learned that electrical outlets were not something that she was supposed to touch. And we don't have that issue with our daughters playing with the electrical outlets, because in the very beginning we were consistent about it. And that is something else. That is why I love consistency so much, because I feel like they learn, like they really do learn what is expected of them, what is expected from them. When you teach them over and over again, they know, even if they may lapse sometimes, or they may do it after they've already been taught, but they really do come to know what is expected. And I feel like that also makes it easier for the younger ones coming up. I remember my husband and I marveling at the fact that we never taught our youngest not to touch electrical outlets, but she never did. To this day, she never interfered with electrical outlets, and I think it's because she never saw her sister doing it. And you know how kids are, they like to follow like their siblings and stuff. So I think that in training like the older one, you kind of reap benefits in the younger one as well. At least that's what we have noticed. But anyways, when dealing with 2-year-olds, they're just learning, and you know, you have to be gentle with them, but at the same time they need to know that certain things are not allowed, and that if mommy says no, she means no. And that's another thing too. Like, you cannot give consequences that make no sense. Like, you cannot tell a child, don't do this, or I'll leave you home all by yourself. That is not an appropriate consequence. You're not going to do that, whether you should not do that. You're not going to do that. And if you're not going to do that, then don't tell the child that it's a consequence. If you say you're going to do it, then do it, because they know that if mommy says not to do something because something will happen, then they know and they will not do it. Really and truly. I feel like that works like a charm. But it's hard. Being consistent is hard. But in terms of like handling the terrible twos, the number one thing is disciplining them consistently. And discipline does not mean spanking. There's a lot of ways to discipline, but the point is that they need a consequence for actions that are unfavorable, you know. And I think that during that stage, you just have to do the work. Yes, it's over and over again. Yes, it's time consuming. Yes, it's frustrating. Yes, you feel like, oh, we dealt with this already and this attitude or this behavior is back. But you keep doing it, because right now I feel like we're at a stage with our oldest where a lot of the things that we taught her when she was younger just does not happen as much anymore. So I have heard that when you do the work at a year, 2 years old, that you know, you really start to see the fruit of it at 4, 5, and 6 years old. And I mean, we are just starting. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm an expert or anything, but I feel like I truly have seen that when you do the work from young, you know, it makes life a lot easier when they're older. And so we are in the thick of it, quite frankly, right now with our youngest old. We're seeing some resurgence of some attitudes that we thought we had dealt with, and right now what we're focusing on is just being consistent. So when she hits her sister, we explain that hitting is not something that we do as a CC family. When she hits, when she bites, she doesn't bite actually, biting is not a thing anymore, but hitting, she knows that hitting is not allowed. She knows that disobeying mommy and daddy is not allowed, and she's trying us right now. She's in a stage where she's really trying out all of the boundaries that we thought she had learned. I was talking to my husband about it just this morning probably, and we were just, you know, reminding each other that this is a phase, that this happened with the oldest one. Sometimes they try their luck again, and you just have to be consistent. Now, here's the thing. In addition to being consistent with discipline, I think we also need to show the kids a lot of love. Like, they need to, it's a balance. Like, you cannot be all authoritative and no love, but you cannot be all love and no authority and no discipline. Children thrive on stability, they thrive on routines and knowing what is expected of them. And yes, we love our kids, but we also need to discipline our kids. The Bible says that God disciplines us, and we should feel very much empowered to discipline our kids and to train them up to be responsible adults that will be a valid contribution into the world. And so we should definitely take our job seriously and balance the two. And it's hard, it really is hard, but I believe that's where we as Christians have an advantage. I think that is where we as Christians, we have the power of the Holy Spirit living within us. Easter is around the corner, and the power that raised Christ up from the dead is the same power that lives within us. And so we are empowered to take care of our kids. We have the power of the Holy Spirit to be wise, to be gentle, to love, to have joy, to be to discipline them as well, and the beautiful thing is that even when we are inconsistent, even when we make mistakes, because I shout out at my kids even when I don't want to, and I have to apologize to them, but even in my errors and in my mistakes, I get to point them to Christ. I get to show them that, hey, mommy's not perfect and I need Christ just as much as you do, and God's grace is overflowing. And even in our mistakes, he is fully capable of helping our kids grow up into good, responsible, Christ-loving children, even when we don't do it all right. So that's my take on terrible twos, or the three-nagers. They're great. That age is a really good age when they learn to say the darnest of things. It's really sweet, and it's challenging, but it's a season. It really does pass. It really does pass. I can say that confidently after raising my 4-year-old. And I know that some kids are different. Some need a lot more, and we saw that a lot in my 2 girls. Like, their personalities are so different. So some things that we didn't have to train our first for, our second just is not wired that way, and we have to train her more in that way than another way, and things like that. So the kids are different, but I really do find that consistency helps, and prayer, of course, that's a given. Pray for your kids, pray even for the simplest things. I pray for my kids all the time. If I feel like they're throwing tantrums, a lot more than often, I'm like, God, they're throwing tantrums. Why are they throwing tantrums? Open my eyes. So, like, if I'm missing something, maybe I need to spend more time with them. Maybe they need more affection, or maybe I am lapsing. Maybe I'm in a season where I'm very tired and I'm not, disciplining as I should. So I ask him, open my eyes, show me what I can do better, and help her, and then I also pray with the kids a lot too. So when they are rude to me, I let them pray, and I tell them to ask God to help them do better, and that the Holy Spirit can empower them to do better. I feel like all of that talk, even though they're very young, I think it's not in vain, and as they get older, you can expand on it. All right, so we still have a few more gifts here, very small, so let's just do 2 more questions. The other one is, how do I handle comparison? And then the last one will be how I do it all. I get that question a lot, so many times. But comparison, there's a phrase that says comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah, I think that's the phrase, but it's very true. Comparison is the thief of joy. But I read this very interesting article a couple of years ago, and it completely changed how I saw other moms. So first and foremost, I think one of the things that, with the advent of social media and YouTube, you get a peek into a lot of people's lives that if were not for these things, you would not see. And the natural tendency is to compare yourself. I'm a horrible mom because she does that and I don't, and all of those things, which happens to me too. I'm not immune. But like I was saying, I read this article which completely really helped, and I'll get to it in a second. But first, one of the things that I think that we need to recognize is that sometimes different is just different, and I learned that in Cuba, because we spend a lot of time with other people of other nationalities, and one of the things that I learned, I think, the most out of that experience was that different is sometimes just different. Different is not better, different is not worse. Sometimes different is just that, different. And I think that sometimes we need to recognize that sometimes people are different from us, but that doesn't mean that they're better, and that doesn't mean that we are better. There are 300 species of roses, I think. And if that shows us anything, it's that there is a lot of diversity in the world. God made us all different. From our physical, appearance, we're very different, down to our personalities and our experiences and how they shape us. We are so different. And so just because another mom is different from you, that doesn't mean that they're better, and it doesn't mean that they're worse. They are just different. So that helps me a lot. Okay. And then the other thing, again, reframing your mindset. But I read this article. I don't think I can link it because I don't even remember where it was from. It was from a couple of years ago, and thankfully it was before I even had kids. So honestly, although I do fall prey to comparison, I feel like it doesn't get me down nearly as much as it used to, because one of the article that I read spoke about a different side of comparison. And basically she was saying that instead of viewing somebody else's life under the scope of, oh, she does this and I don't, and she's better than I am, and I'm such a horrible person, she said, if you are comparing somebody to yourself, you can do one of two things. One, you can recognize that what they are doing is good, and it is something that you should probably implement in your life. So if this person, I don't know, just a random example, has a schedule for how they wash their clothes, I don't know, and you're like, that feels like something that might really work for me and my family. It's an opportunity for you to grow as a person. It's an opportunity to recognize an area in your life where you're weak and an area that you can grow in. And so instead of looking down on yourself, you don't look down at yourself. You look at what is different in the other person. What are they doing that's inspiring? What are they doing that can be helpful to you in the season that you are in? And you implement it. It's that simple. Like, if you find that this person is doing so much and they make you feel bad, don't make your insecurities shape you and how you see that person. Use it as an opportunity to grow. Like, what is she doing that maybe I need to do? And sometimes there's nothing that she's doing that you need to do. You just appreciate that she's different and she has a different personality and she does things that you would never do and that doesn't work for your family, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be in the case where you beat yourself up because you're not doing something that somebody else is doing or that kind of thing. You just use it as a jumping ground. And I feel like after I read that article, it just changed how I see other people a lot. And now, I'm not in some invisible competition with anybody. I am doing myself. And if I see somebody doing something that I absolutely admire, you know what? I want to find out how they're doing it so that I can do it too. And I don't feel that way about everybody. There are, like I said, there are certain things that I know would not be a good fit for my family or a good fit for my personality, and good for them if what they're doing works for them, but it's not for me. That doesn't mean that they're not as good as I or I'm not good at them. It's just that we're different. You know what I mean? So that is how I deal with comparison, and I hope that maybe seeing it from that frame of mind would help. And then the last question is how I do it all. I get this question a lot because, like I said, I am a doctor. I work full-time. I take care of my kids full-time as well because they're homeschooled. I do content creation. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter, a sister, and all the things. And so some people look at that and they're like, how in the world can you do all of that? I'm struggling just to have a job and take care of my kids. And I have so many thoughts about this. And one of the very first things that I always say is that I'm not doing it all. Like, it's a myth. There's nobody who's doing it all. I promise you, like, there is nobody who is doing it all. Like, it is a myth to do it all. However, there are certain disciplines in my life that I think that enable me to do as much as I do, and one of them comes down to personality. And I think a lot of people forget that I am like a naturally high performing or high capacity person and high energy. I have always balanced a lot. When I was in school, I did more subjects than required. I also did sports athletically and I did well at both of them. I have always been that type of person. Even when I went to medical school, I did sports as well, very active at church, and I did well at most of these things. So like some of it has to do with personality. Like it's just my personality. Like some of it is just my personality. I cannot control it, you know. And you know, if your personality is not like that, then you should not have those same expectations on yourself. However, even with like the natural bent in personality, which I don't think we should cling too strongly to, because you know, Christ came to change us and transform us, and yes, we are naturally a certain way, but we should not let that determine, you know, like everything about us. Sometimes God is asking us to change and to better, which is against our natural instinct and against our personality. So there is benefit in recognizing like what your personality is, but there is also benefit in recognizing that, hey, there's something about my personality that I need to change. But anyways, I digress. So part of it is definitely personality. I definitely can admit to that. But I do think that I have worked hard in being disciplined and being consistent, which is something that I had to learn. I think that I'm a natural procrastinator. For example, in an earlier video, I told you guys that I had collected everything that I needed to do my taxes, and you know what? I still have not done my taxes. Because going down to that office just does not seem pleasant to me, and I have procrastinated it. I was in town today, I was in town yesterday. Did I go file my taxes? No, I did not. So I think that I can definitely be a natural procrastinator, but sometimes you just have to get up and do the work. Like sometimes you just have to get up and do it. And I feel like when I think of what really helps me is thinking of future me. And what is future me going to be thankful for? So let's say I need to meal prep and I really don't feel like it. I actually need to meal prep when I'm done with this video and I don't feel like it. But I know that future me is definitely going to be thankful that I got my butt up and I meal prep. And sometimes that's all I need to think about in order to get the things done. You know, sometimes you just have to strap on your big girl pants and do what needs to get done. You know, you can't wait for the motivation. Sometimes it never comes. You cannot wait for the discipline. As you do the thing, you know, you build your muscles, your discipline muscles, and it gets easier and easier. Honestly, you have to train yourself. Like you really have to train yourself. And then the other thing I would say too is that I feel like you also have to find systems and routines that work. So for example, laundry is not something that I like doing and dedicating an entire day to doing it. So you will not find me on one Saturday. I mean, it's different because obviously I work day shifts and night shifts. I know some people work Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, and so they can't wash a load of clothes every day. But again, you know, all depends on your lifestyle and whatever. But the system of washing one load every single day is really good for me and my family right now. It really works well for us. You know, we never run out of laundry. I mean, sometimes we have clothes that need to be folded for days because none of us want to put them away, but at least they're washed and clean, you know. But you know, it's a system that I've developed. The other system that helps really well is cleaning one room a day. So instead of spending like an entire afternoon cleaning the entire house, I'll just clean the kitchen, and then another day I'll just clean the bathroom, and then another day I'll just clean the bedrooms, and that works really well. In terms of content creation, for example, I film when my kids are not there, and I try to be ahead of my content so that I don't miss an upload. Like I have a system, like there's a specific day where I film, there's a specific day where I edit, etc, etc. It's a system, and sometimes I don't want to do what's planned for the day, but I do it anyway because I know that future me is gonna wish that I would have done that. Yeah, so like I was saying, part of it is personality, part of it is just doing what needs to be done when you have to do it, even if you don't feel like, discipline. Another part of it is depending on God's grace and knowing when I have to put something down or skip a week's video because I, you know, can't overdo it, or you know, accepting that the house is just gonna be dirty for the day or for a couple of days because, you know, I'm not feeling well, or whatever the case is. You know, depending on God's grace, especially when I need to do things that I don't feel like doing, I always pray and ask God to help me. And then the other thing is support. You know, a lot of people find themselves in that situation where they can't rely on their parents for help and support because they're simply unable to, and then they find them, and then they compare themselves to people who do have that support, you know. So it really depends on your situation and stuff. But in terms of doing it all, I don't do it all. There are lots of things that I don't do that other people do regularly, but I just, like, I don't watch TV, for example. I don't watch TV. Like, I'm not interested. I don't like it. I watch a movie here and there with my husband. I watch YouTube videos every now and then, but TV is like not something that I watch. Like shows, like I always hear about Suits and Love is Blind and Grey's Anatomy. I've never watched a single episode of any one of those things. Like, it's not my thing. So there are lots of things, you know, that I don't do. And I'm not saying that any of these things are wrong or anything. It's just that I don't do a lot of these things that other people may do. And so it really depends on what's important to you, prioritizing it, deciding that you're going to prioritize it. And it would be remiss of me to say, but planning is also a huge part of it. Like, planning is also a very huge part of it. Knowing what to do, when to do it, helps a lot. And so sitting down on a Sunday evening, planning my week, when I'm going to film, when I'm going to edit, when I'm going to meal prep for whatever meal, like, planning is definitely, besides like personality and all of the things that I mentioned, planning is like my number one hack. So anyways, I don't know how long this video is, but if you're still here at the end listening to me, thank you guys so much for joining me. If you have any comments at all, leave them down below. I'd love to hash it out with you guys in the comments. So thank you guys so much for watching. I feel like I've talked your ear out enough. I just have one more gift to go, so I will do it off camera. But again, thank you guys so much for joining me, listening to me. I would love to hear some of your viewpoints in the comment below. Don't feel any way about sharing them with me. I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you're new here and you've listened to all of this, then you need to hit the subscribe button, okay? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.